No, things work together for good to them that love the Lord. No.
Hello to you, family. This is All Things with Sibongile Mufokeng, and I'm back at Radio Pulpit. And I'm so honored to be here. And I'm with you for the next 20 minutes. Have you lost your loved ones? Have you lost your mom and dad and siblings and you found yourself to be alone? How did you cope? How did you go about it? Well, my guests today, Busi, Sibiya and Benji Motloung, will be sharing with us on their journeys when they lost everyone in their families and they found themselves to be alone. How did they make it through? Do stay tuned, do not go nowhere, and I hope their stories will encourage you too. With awesome people who've got wonderful journeys that will encourage you. You can see in their smiles. So, Busi, how are you doing?
I'm well, thanks, and how are you?
I'm blessed of the Lord.
Hallelujah.
Benji Motloung, how are you?
God is great. I'm very much well. Thank you, ma'am.
You guys have gone through almost a similar journey.
Yeah.
Where you found yourselves alone at home.
Yeah.
Parents gone, your siblings gone, but you made it. Look at where you're at now, and you still, God is still taking you far. You know?
Oh, yes.
Sis, let's start with you. Take us through your journey a little bit on what transpired at home, because maybe as I'm saying this, a family member might not really understand what am I talking about when I say family wasn't there, siblings were not there, parents were gone as well.
All right. I was born into a family of 5, and I was the third born, meaning 5 kids, and I was the third born, and my parents got divorced when I was 5 years. That was after my brother, the second born, died. That didn't go well, so they had to separate, and my mom went separate with my dad. And I am now, the journey just started there, I think, because I had to choose who to live with. And then I stayed with my dad for quite some time. And then I experienced bad treatment as a stepdaughter, because now my dad got another woman, and yeah, that came out so bad. And then I had to leave and stay with my relative. They had to raise me.
So you stayed with relatives?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I stayed with my relative, because that was, my mom was not okay with the divorce and everything. So yeah, and I had to stay with the relative, and I had to learn a lot of things. I had to learn a lot from there. At an early age, I had to be responsible. I had to know certain things. And yeah, I got to school and I got some time to know my mother as well. That didn't go well, because now her mother, my grandmother, died as well, and she was the only child. The situation was even getting worse.
How many siblings did you have?
I had 5 siblings.
So you were the eldest?
No, I was the third born. Yep. From my mother's side. Okay. Yeah. And so now I lived with my sister. My sister is the firstborn, because the secondborn had died at an age of 6, if not 4, somewhere there, because I was not there. I was not born yet. Yeah, I got to experience independence, a lot of it. Okay. And I got to understand where is life taking us, because the only thing that I would depend on was church. Every now and then I would also get hope in church. I would go to church to, be in an environment that is happy, that is healthy for me, because now reality was not good. So yeah, I grew from that, and God was with me because I had to learn even that God is on my side at an early age. Even though I didn't understand much, but I knew they used to teach us in church and Sunday school that God is always with you. So whenever I pray, I used to pray, and I think I didn't understand much, but yeah, I would do whatever that they told us to do at church. So yeah, that was.
Dade Benji Motloung, can you take us through your own journey?
Just to cut it short, when it comes to me, when I was a teen, I had to be an adult. I had 4 siblings, and I also had my mom and my dad, so everybody passed away. At the age of 17, I found myself staying alone, and I had to do whatever it takes to survive. What I would basically do was to go to my neighbors, ask them if I could, help clean up their yards, and whatever that they would give me, and then I would go and buy myself some mealie meal, rice, or maybe some cooking oil. And in the yard, there was a garden, so I would just plant some vegetables, and then I would just cook them, so I would have at least pap and some veggies from the garden. And you understand the biggest challenge is that being a child at that age, and then you are forced to be an adult while you also need someone to be looking after you. That was the biggest challenge, but I thank God because at the end of the day, here I am, even though in the process, it was really cracking me up, and I only realized that as an adult, that this was really eating me up, and it only came out recently that this thing was really eating me inside.
Just pause a little bit. Busi mentioned that she had to stay with relatives at some point. Where were your relatives? And what about school? How did you go through school?
Relatives were there, but let's face it, usually relatives will come to the funeral, make promises that we're going to be there, we'll be there for you, whatever you need. After the funeral, everybody goes home, you start calling them, nobody picks up. If they do pick up, I'm busy, I'll come and see you on Monday, I'll call you back. All kinds of excuses. But at the end of the day, you're all by yourself. I was totally all by myself. Relatives were there, but they never came for me.
So, Busi, when your mom passed on, and what happened with you? Were you still with your relatives?
At the age of, when I was doing grade 10, I had a privilege of a family. I got adopted from church. There was a family that loved me so much, and they saw potential in me, also grew me in the music industry, because I remember the father of that house was the praise and worship team pastor. Then he saw potential on me and adopted me, and I stayed with them for a year. I was doing grade 10. And my mom was just staying all over the place because of depression. And I think she lacked a lot of support. She was drinking, she was smoking, she was, all that. So at the age of grade 11, I had to come back home. Something transpired with the family because they thought maybe I was a bit too much. I don't know. I didn't understand why they brought me home. And then I got back to stay with my mother. I had a privilege of staying with her from grade 11 and grade 12 because she got sick. Yeah, she died 2010 with a very, very sad heart, because by then she lost all her kids. I was the only one that left. Yeah, and my mom died on 2010. I remember I was doing matric around September. She was so sick, depressed, and all of that. So they couldn't actually figure out what was wrong, or maybe they knew, they didn't want to tell me. I'm not sure. But yeah, that was very sad. Life started there and there, because now I had to live with a relative. And let's face it, relatives sometimes they get tired to buy bread for you every now and then. When this house is tired, I'll go to the other house. When that house is tired, But I made it. I ended up being independent. And yeah.
At a very early age.
Yeah, I think at 20, yeah. 3 years later, my mom died. I had to live alone and see life.
Now, Benji says that he only realized later in life how much losing his family had affected him. What about with you? Did you find yourself in such a situation where you were also depressed?
How did that affect you? Did you experience any depression?
Yeah, definitely. For me, it's something that comes now and then. I cannot say I'm over it, because now I have a daughter. I am trying by all means to give my daughter whatever that I didn't get from my mom.
Yes.
And sometimes it breaks me down if I can't do certain things for her. Or I would just carry myself and be strong, because now you have to do certain things. You have to face the audience. You have to face the church, because you're involved there and there. And there comes a time whereby you are alone and you need help and you don't know where to go. You don't know who to trust, because it's a very sensitive issue. One would say, but your parents, it's been long. Why are you still... Because at that time, when my mom died, I didn't have time to cry and mourn. I had to stand up and prepare for the funeral. I have to make things to happen. I didn't have that time to be weak and all that. That comes now and then. I cannot say...
You're totally healed.
Yeah. It's just the
a
wound.
journey.
Yes, it's just the wound that will come now and then. And knowing the Lord, it's coming okay, because now I would just be in my corner and talk to God, cry, do whatever in that corner. And because I know that He's there and He understands me better, because I wouldn't even know why He decided to choose us to do that too, you know. But God is there, and God is really faithful to us.
Wow. Motloung, as you were losing your family members one by one, your parents, your siblings, what was happening in your mind at that moment in time?
Busi just mentioned one thing. She didn't have time, to even think about what's happening. That was the same case. I didn't have any time, to even think about what's going on. There was no time to mourn. I never actually got a chance to mourn my family members. There was no time, because I had to focus on way forward. I had to focus on how do I survive? How do I make sure that when I go to bed, I have something to eat. When I wake up in the morning, there's something for me to eat. How do I survive? That was the only thing I had to focus on. And, being a male, I think that also played a big role, because being a male gave me the mentality that I had to walk around being strong so that no one would see me bleeding. But eventually, that played a big role in me cracking inside.
Someone who's listening to us right now might be asking a question. Why are they still hanging on to Jesus and still saying that He is the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings after losing their siblings and their parents? And you still saying He's the King?
Oh yes, oh yes.
He is Lord.
Oh yes, He is.
Okay, tell me about what sustained you. We see you had a relationship with God, but you're still on that journey with God.
Yeah.
And you're a musician, you're recording. Your album will be coming out soon.
Yes.
You're working on that.
Yeah.
You too.
Yes, oh yes.
Do you think that God allowed you to go through that for His own purposes?
Now I know that it's God willingly for me to go through what I went through. Then I didn't understand. I didn't know why me. I didn't understand why would God love me and then take away people who would present the love to me, But now I understand it better, because whenever God's purpose it's in your life, there's nothing that is going to block it. Even if He has to move people away from you, He will do that. I learned a lot from the book, from the guy Joseph. Nothing would would stop the purpose of God. Instead, God will use people around you to push you to whatever that He's aligned you to do, you know. I don't believe if I grew in a family that has everything, that has whatever, I would be where I am with the relationship I have with Him now, or in my music life now. I understand Him better because I had to be left alone. I had to understand how God operates. And sometimes God would speak, but in a large crowd, you won't be able to listen to His voice. He would just separate you. His word says that. He says, I've chosen you. I've set you apart. Now, the setting apart, it has everything to do with whatever that's happening in your life. Even things that you love, things that you wish you have, He will separate you from them, you know, just for His purpose to be fulfilled. So now I understand better.
Yes, ma'am. Makes two of us. It's only now that I understand better. It didn't make sense back then.
Yeah, God doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
He sure doesn't. Actually, even when I was very close with God, there were times I would actually blame God.
Yeah.
And say, but why, God? After how faithful I've been to you, you know what I've done for you, you know the sacrifices I've made, but why this? I remember this one night, I was actually working, I was on duty, and I just had to separate myself from everybody else. And I went out there and I was actually shouting at God. I was shouting at God. I was so angry at Him. And He kept so quiet. He kept so quiet for such a very, very, very long time. It didn't make sense to me that after everything that I've sacrificed, everything I've done for God, but God allows all this to happen to me. It didn't make sense at all. I mean, as much as I would read the Word, I would read the Bible, but nothing made sense to me at all. It just didn't make sense at all. But today, it makes a lot of sense. You know, there is that time where God just wants you in His potter's house to mold you so that He can prepare you for what He has actually designed you for. But now we often confuse when we're in the potter's house and when we're in the battlefield. Yeah. We sometimes start fighting, not realizing that God is saying, come here, I want to mold you.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
A lot of people would lose their minds if they would find themselves your shoe. What kept you going? What kept you mentally stable?
Throughout. What kept you going just mentally now?
To talk and to receive love. You know, God is so amazing because He uses people to come in your life. And even though sometimes it's for a season, but those people will just leave something in you. You know, I never forget the family that adopted me. I never, even though now things are different, but they taught me a lot. They taught me in such a short period of time. They gave me love that I still have even now. They gave me that. Pastors, they play a very big role in, you know, you can be a pastor and be in the pulpit and preach, but the real love that you need to do is the display. A phone call, a hug, somebody to tell you that it's okay, I love you, God is with you. Continue, pick up yourself, be encouraged, do this, read the word. You know, those people, because I had to understand that God doesn't come Himself to you. He uses people. He uses people. Whenever the people of Israel, the Israelites, God used Moses, you know, and Moses didn't know how to talk, but there was Aaron on the side. You get what I'm saying? So God will just use people in your life to sustain you. Sometimes it will be for years, sometimes it will be for a long time, sometimes, but you will learn and you would know, you would grab it. Even though I can come to you and be here for you and be harsh, give you that tough love, by the time I leave, you would understand. Or by the time you grow, you would understand. You know, my great-grandmother used to be so strict. You get what I'm saying? So I would be forced, and that was a training. Now, I I just feel something. If I'm not going to church on Sunday, there's just something wrong with me, because fellowship was invested in me. You know, then I would cry. I would be like, because now I'm an orphan, people are doing this and that to me. Now I understand better, because they've planted good things.
Oh, yes.
So people, God will use people.
So you would say that he is a father to the fatherless.
Father, he is.
Using people. How did you remain stable?
Stable through it all.
Mama Fuken, to be quite frank, I pretended to be mentally stable. In 2015, I attempted suicide. And 2 weeks after my first suicide attempt, I attempted another suicide. And 3 years later, 2018, I attempted suicide for the third time. Between then and now, I had to act like I'm strong in front of everyone. That includes my family. By that time, I was married already. I had to be strong for my family. I had to be strong for the church. I had to be strong for everyone. And people didn't see that. People could not notice that something was wrong with me at all. So I was not really making it mentally until when this thing came out. It actually came out in 2018, because the first 2 suicide attempts, no one knew about them. But the third one came out because I had to be in hospital. That's when it came out. And that's only when people started knowing that, okay, this man was bleeding inside. And to be quite honest, I went for counseling for 9 months, and you can't say you're 100% even after that, because it still comes back. Yes, it's a journey. It's a very, very long journey.